My wife's boy best friend texted, "How's our baby?" while I held my 1-month-old son in the hospital nursery. I stared at those 3 words until they blurred. My hands didn't shake. I simply screenshotted it, set the phone down, and smiled. Because that single text just handed me everything I needed to burn their whole world down.
Hello, everyone. Today's story was inspired by a viewer submission and adapted into a full story just for you. If you'd like to share your own story, the submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's get into it.
Let me take you back to 3 weeks ago, the night my son was born. My name is Daniel. I was 31 years old, and I had spent the last decade building a life I was proud of. I owned a small contracting business. I owned our house outright. I had married the woman I thought I would grow old with. Her name was Rachel, and that night, watching her sleep in the hospital bed after 18 hours of labor, I believed I was the luckiest man alive. Our son was small and warm and impossibly light in my arms. The nurse had handed him to me so Rachel could rest. I sat in the chair by the window and just looked at him. I counted his fingers. I memorized his face. I had waited a long time to be a father, and I told myself I would never let anything take this feeling away. There was a third person who had always been part of our lives, Marcus. Rachel's best friend since childhood. He was at our wedding. He was at every birthday, every holiday, every dinner. Rachel called him her brother. I had no reason to think otherwise. When people warned me about a man being that close to my wife, I defended him. I told them I trusted my wife completely. I meant it. That night, Rachel's phone buzzed on the tray table beside her bed. She didn't stir. I almost ignored it. But the screen lit up and the message preview sat right there in plain view. It was from Marcus. It said, "How's our baby?" I read it 3 times. I told myself it was a typo. I told myself he meant it the way an uncle might, but something cold settled in my chest, and I knew. I had always known, somewhere underneath the trust I had chosen to give. I did not wake Rachel. I did not say a word. I picked up her phone, took a screenshot, noted the timestamp, and set it back down exactly where it had been. Then I looked at my son, still sleeping against my chest, and I made a decision. I was not going to scream. I was not going to throw accusations across a hospital room. People who react in anger lose. People who plan win. And I had spent my whole career planning, measuring twice, and building things that did not fall down, so I smiled. I held my son a little tighter, and I started counting the days until everything they had taken would come back to me. We brought our son home 2 days later. I named him Liam. Rachel wanted to name him something else, but I held my ground on that one small thing, and she let it go. For the next week, I became the best husband I had ever been. I made breakfast. I handled the night feedings so Rachel could sleep. I told her how proud I was of her. I kissed her forehead and meant for her to feel safe. I needed her comfortable. I needed her to believe nothing had changed, because comfortable people get careless, and careless people leave evidence. While she rested, I started paying attention to the things I had spent years ignoring. Marcus came by on the 3rd day with a gift for the baby. It was expensive, too expensive for an uncle. He held Liam with a familiarity that made my stomach turn, and Rachel watched the two of them with a softness she had stopped showing me months ago. I smiled and shook his hand and offered him a beer. I watched everything. That night, after Rachel fell asleep, I went through the phone records. Not her phone, which was locked, but the family plan account I paid for every month. The call logs told a story. Marcus and Rachel talked every single day, sometimes for an hour, sometimes at 2 in the morning. The pattern went back well over a year, long before Liam was conceived. I cross-referenced the dates. I am not a detective, but I can read a calendar. There was a stretch around the time Liam would have been conceived where Rachel told me she was visiting her sister for a long weekend. The call log showed her phone pinging towers in a city 3 hours from her sister's house, the same city where Marcus had taken a work trip that same weekend. I remembered her sister's confused face at the baby shower when Rachel mentioned that visit. I had brushed it off then. I did not brush it off now. I did not feel rage. I felt something colder and more useful. I felt clarity. I needed certainty before I moved. Suspicion is not proof, and I was not going to build a case on a feeling. So I ordered a discreet at-home paternity test, the kind that ships in a plain box and tells you nothing about who sent it. I had it delivered to my office, not the house. I knew that whatever the result was, I would still love that little boy. That part was already decided. Liam had done nothing wrong. But I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with, because the truth would determine how far this went and how hard they would fall. That night, I rocked Liam back to sleep, and Rachel's phone buzzed again on the counter. I did not look. I did not need to anymore. I already knew what was coming.
Hello, guys. If you're enjoying the story so far, please take a second to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Now, let's get back to it.
The test kit sat in my desk drawer at the office for 2 days before I worked up the nerve to use it. I took the sample from Liam during a diaper change while Rachel showered, a cheek swab, fast and painless. He looked up at me the whole time with those wide eyes, and I had to stop for a second and breathe. I swabbed my own cheek next, sealed both samples, and overnighted them from a Dropbox across town. Then I waited. 5 days. 5 days of making breakfast and handling night feedings and telling my wife I loved her. 5 days of shaking Marcus's hand when he came by. He came by a lot now. He had started talking to me like he felt sorry for me. Little comments, asking if I was getting enough sleep, offering to take Rachel and the baby out so I could rest. I said yes every time. I wanted him comfortable too. The email came on a Thursday afternoon while I was on a job site. I stepped into my truck, closed the door, and opened the results on my phone. Probability of paternity, 0%. I read it once. I did not need to read it again. I set the phone on the dashboard and sat there in the cab of my truck for a long time, watching my crew work through the windshield. I had expected it, I had prepared for it, it still hit me somewhere I did not have a name for. But here's the thing I want you to understand. When I drove home that evening and picked Liam up out of his crib, none of it changed. He gripped my finger the way he always did. He calmed down the way he always did when I held him. I was the only father he had ever known, and a piece of paper was not going to change who showed up for him at 2 in the morning. That decision was mine, and I made it right there. What did change was my plan. Before the result, there was a small chance I was wrong, and a small chance this was a marriage I could try to save. After the result, there was nothing left to save. There was only the matter of how much they would lose. That weekend, I overheard something I was not supposed to. Rachel was on the back porch, voice low, thinking I was asleep. She was talking to Marcus. She said the word soon. She said they just had to be patient. She said something about waiting until everything was in both their names before they made any moves. I stood inside the dark kitchen and listened. They were not just having an affair. They were planning to take everything. The house, the business, my son. They had a plan. So did I, and mine was better. I started paying attention to the money the very next morning. For years, I had handled the business accounts and let Rachel handle the household ones. It seemed fair at the time. She paid the bills, managed the savings, kept the budget. I trusted her with it the same way I trusted her with everything else. That trust had cost me, and now I needed to know exactly how much. I logged into the joint savings account first. Over the past 8 months, there had been a series of withdrawals. Not huge ones. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. Small enough that I never would have noticed on a quick glance. But added up, nearly $20,000 had moved out of our savings and into an account I did not recognize. I wrote down the account number. Then I looked at the business. This was the part that worried me. 3 weeks before Liam was born, Rachel had asked me to bring Marcus on as a consultant. She framed it as a favor. Marcus had a head for numbers, she said. He could help me organize the books, maybe find tax savings. I had been too tired and too distracted to think hard about it, and I had almost said yes. I had even started the paperwork. I found it half filled out in a folder on my desk. If I'd signed it, Marcus would have had a documented role in my company. A foothold. Something a lawyer could have used to argue he was owed a piece of it. That was the both their names, Rachel had whispered about in the porch. They were not waiting for affection. They were waiting for access. I felt sick for a moment, and then I felt grateful. I had caught it in time. That afternoon, I told my crew I had a doctor's appointment, and I drove to a law office on the other side of the county. I picked a firm Rachel would never have heard of, far from anyone we knew. I sat across from an attorney named Patricia, and I laid everything out. The text, the call logs, the paternity result, the withdrawals, the half-signed consultant agreement. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she told me 3 things. First, do not confront them. The moment they know, they start hiding assets and building their own story. Second, document everything and change nothing visible. Keep acting normal. Let them believe their plan is still on track. Third, protect what is mine quietly and legally, starting immediately. She explained what I could and could not do in our state. What counted as marital property. What the paternity result meant for custody and support. How to move carefully so that when this finally broke open, the law would be standing on my side instead of theirs. I left that office with a folder full of notes and a plan with actual steps. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was the one holding the cards. The next 2 weeks were the hardest acting job of my life. I followed Patricia's instructions exactly. I changed nothing visible. I still made breakfast. I handled the night feedings. I still kissed Rachel on the forehead and told her I loved her, and every time I did it, I thought about the porch and the word soon. But I kept my face calm. I had built a career making things look finished while the real work happened underneath. And this was no different. Underneath, I moved carefully. I opened a new bank account at a branch in a town where no one knew me. I did not touch the joint accounts because draining them would have tipped them off. Instead, I quietly redirected a portion of the business income into the new account, money the company was owed but had not yet collected. On paper, it looked like slow-paying clients. In reality, I was building a reserve that Rachel did not know existed. I gathered the documents Patricia asked for, property records for the house which I had owned before the marriage, business incorporation papers, tax returns, bank statements going back 2 years. I scanned everything and saved copies in 3 places, including a drive I kept locked in my truck. I never signed the consultant agreement. When Rachel asked about it, I told her my accountant had advised waiting until after tax season. She accepted that. She did not push, which told me they were not as close to their deadline as I had feared. I had time. Marcus, though, was getting bolder. He started staying for dinner without being invited. He sat in my chair once, the one at the head of the table, and only moved when I walked in. He gave me advice about my own business, things he had clearly heard secondhand from Rachel. He talked to me slowly, like I was a child who needed help understanding the world. One night, he actually put his hand on my shoulder and told me I was a good provider, and that Liam was lucky to have someone like me around. Someone like me around. I held that beer, and I smiled and I thanked him. I wanted to put him through the wall. I did not people who plan win. There was one close call. Rachel came into the home office while I was on the phone with Patricia. I heard the door and I switched my tone mid-sentence, turning it into a boring conversation about a supplier invoice. Rachel lingered for a second, watching me. Then she asked who I was talking to. I told her the lumber yard. She studied my face for a moment longer than I liked. Then she nodded and left. I sat there with my heart pounding for a full minute. That was the moment I understood I could not get sloppy. Not once. Not with this much on the line, and not with my son's future sitting in the balance. If they were waiting for access, I decided to give them something to reach for, on my terms. Patricia had told me our state was a one-party consent state, which meant I could legally record any conversation I was part of. That single fact opened a door. I did not need to catch them in a private moment, I just needed to be in the room. So I built the bait. Over dinner one evening, with Marcus sitting in my house like he paid the mortgage, I brought up an opportunity. I told them I was thinking about expanding the business. A second crew, new equipment, a contract that could double our revenue inside a year. I said it casually, like a man who trusted the people at his table. Then I mentioned I would need a partner to help manage the growth. Someone with a head for numbers. I watched Marcus sit up straighter. Rachel jumped in before he could. She said Marcus would be perfect. She said it too fast. Marcus played it cool, but I saw it in his eyes. The thing they had been waiting for was being handed to them, and they could not believe their luck. Over the next week, I let them chase it. I had meetings with Marcus where I asked his opinion and recorded every word on my phone sitting face up on the table. He talked freely. He talked about how he and Rachel had always made a good team. He talked about how I worked too much and missed too much at home, and how someone needed to look after my family when I could not. He said it like a friend. It was on tape. I asked him direct questions and let him answer. I asked what kind of stake he thought a partner deserved. He said a real partner should be on the deed of the business and the house both, since family and business went together. I asked if Rachel agreed. He said that they had already talked about it. There it was. Their plan, in his own voice on my recording. Rachel got careless too. She started leaving her phone unlocked around me because I had been so calm for so long that she stopped seeing me as a threat. One afternoon, she set it on the counter and went to change Liam, and a message came in from Marcus. I did not unlock anything. I just photographed the screen. It said they should push to get the paperwork signed before the baby's 2-month checkup, because after that, things would get complicated. I did not know what they meant by complicated. I did not care. I had timestamps now. I had a deadline they had set themselves. I had Marcus on tape claiming my family and my business as his own. I called Patricia that night and told her it was time to set the table, the real table. the one where they would learn exactly who they had been dealing with. Patricia and I spent a week preparing. While we did, I started pulling threads, not to confront anyone yet, just to weaken the ground they were standing on. The first thread was Rachel's family. Her parents were good people. Old-fashioned, honest, the kind who believed in marriage and would not have approved of what their daughter was doing. I had always gotten along with them, so I started calling. Nothing accusatory. I just made sure to mention casually how often Marcus was around lately, how he stayed for dinner, how he gave advice about my business. I let her mother draw her own conclusions. Her mother went quiet on the phone in a way that told me she was already drawing them. She had never fully trusted that friendship either. I planted the seed and let it grow on its own. The second thread was Marcus himself, a man that confident usually has things he is hiding. So I did some quiet asking around. Marcus worked in finance at a mid-sized firm downtown. It turned out he was not nearly as successful as he pretended to be. He had been passed over for a promotion twice. He was behind on a car lease. And that account where Rachel's $20,000 had gone, the one I had written down weeks ago, turned out to be his. He had been using my savings to stay afloat. That changed things. This was not just a man in love with my wife. This was a man with money problems who had found a woman with access to a house, a business, and a savings account. The affair might have been real. The plan around it was about survival, and I was the resource being harvested. I gave that information to Patricia. She told me it strengthened everything. It established motive. It showed a pattern. It made Marcus look exactly like what he was. Then the ground started shifting on its own. Rachel's mother showed up at our house, unannounced one afternoon. She watched Marcus and Rachel in the kitchen for 10 minutes, the way they stood too close, the way they finished each other's sentences. She did not say anything to them. But before she left, she pulled me aside at the door and squeezed my hand and said, "You take care of that baby, Daniel, no matter what." She knew. She did not have proof, but a mother knows her daughter. Marcus felt it too. His firm started asking questions about an expense report. His landlord left a notice. He came by the house less, and when he did, the confidence had cracks in it. He started pushing Rachel harder about the consultant paperwork, and I could hear them arguing in low voices on the porch now instead of whispering sweet plans. They were starting to panic. They could feel something closing in, but they could not see what it was. I could. I had built it. I chose a Sunday dinner for the reveal. I told Rachel I wanted to celebrate Liam's 2-month milestone with family. I invited her parents. I told her to invite Marcus, since he was practically family now. She liked that. She had no idea I had picked the exact deadline they had set for themselves. Patricia helped me prepare a folder. 1 copy for the table, 3 more locked away. Everything was in it, organized and labeled. I was calm that morning. I fed Liam, I shaved, and I set the table myself. Everyone arrived by 6. Rachel's parents, Marcus, Rachel holding the baby, we ate. I let them have the meal. I waited until the plates were clear and Rachel's mother was holding Liam, away from the table, safe. Then I stood up and said I had an announcement. I said I had decided to bring on a business partner. Marcus smiled. Rachel smiled. I watched them exchange a look and I let it sit for 1 second. Then I said the partnership was off and I slid the folder into the middle of the table. I started with the text. I read it out loud. "How's our baby?" I told everyone the date and time it was sent, the night my son was born, while I held him in the hospital. The room went silent. Then I laid out the rest, 1 page at a time, the call logs going back over a year. The cell tower records from the weekend. Rachel said she was at her sister's. The paternity result, 0%. The $20,000 that left our savings and landed in Marcus's account. His missed promotions, his car lease, his money problems. The recording of Marcus saying he should be on the deed of my house and my business. The message about signing before the 2-month checkup. I did not raise my voice once. I just read. Rachel went pale and started talking fast. She said it was not what it looked like. She said I had twisted everything. She turned to her parents, and her mother looked at her with an expression I will never forget. Her mother handed Liam to me, not to Rachel, to me. That said everything. Marcus tried to stand and leave. I told him to sit down because the next part involved him. I told him I knew about the expense report his firm was looking into. I told him I knew his landlord had served notice. I told him that the money he had been living on for 8 months was mine and that my lawyer had already documented all of it. He sat back down. Rachel said the one thing she thought would save her. She said, "But Liam is mine. You cannot keep him from me." I looked at her, and then I looked at the boy in my arms, and I told her the truth. I said Liam had a father. I was standing right here, and I was not going anywhere. The fallout came fast because I had already built the structure to hold it. I filed for divorce the next morning. Patricia had everything ready. Because I had owned the house before the marriage and kept the paperwork clean, it was never on the table. Because I had documented the $20,000 Rachel moved into Marcus's account, the court treated it as marital waste, and it came back to me in the settlement. Because I had never signed the consultant agreement, Marcus had no claim to a single bolt of my business. Rachel hired a lawyer and tried to fight. Her lawyer took one look at the folder Patricia sent over and advised her to settle. The text, the call logs, the cell tower records, the recordings, the bank trail. There was nothing to argue. There was only damage control, and there was not much of that left to do. Marcus lost more than he ever stood to gain. The expense report his firm had been questioning turned into an internal audit. They found more than one problem. He was let go before the divorce was even final. Without a job, he could not cover the car lease or the back rent, and the apartment was gone within 2 months. The $20,000 that might have kept him afloat was sitting back in my account where it belonged. He had gambled everything on getting his name on my deed, and he walked away with nothing but a reputation that followed him around the small finance world we both lived near. Rachel and Marcus did not last. People who build a relationship on taking from someone else do not have much to fall back on once the taking stops. Within weeks of losing the money and the plan, they turned on each other. I heard later that he blamed her for getting careless, and she blamed him for the text that started it all. I did not gloat. I did not need to. I just let it happen. The custody piece was the part that mattered most to me. This is where the law could have hurt me, because biologically Liam was not mine. But I had been on the birth certificate. I had been his father for every single day of his life. Patricia walked me through the steps to make it permanent. I petitioned to establish legal paternity and then to formally adopt him. Rachel, facing everything else, did not contest it. She signed the papers. Some part of me thinks she knew it was the one decent thing she could still do. So I won. Not just the house and the business and the money. I won the only thing I had actually been fighting for from the beginning. I sat in the courtroom the day it became final, holding my son, and the judge signed the order that made me his father in the eyes of the law forever. He had always been mine. Now it was simply official. It has been 2 years now. Liam is walking. He talks more every day, and his first clear word was Dada. He said it to me across the living room one morning, and I had to sit down on the floor because my legs did not feel steady. He is the best thing that has ever happened to me, and the strangest part of this whole story is that I owe him to a betrayal I never saw coming. The business did expand after all. I brought on a real partner, an honest man who had worked for me for years and earned it. We hired the second crew. We took the bigger contracts. The company is doing better now than it ever did when I was distracted and trusting the wrong people. The reserve account I built in secret became the foundation for all of it. The money they tried to take from me ended up building the thing they wanted a piece of. The house is still mine. It is quieter now, but it is a good quiet. I painted Liam's room myself. I coach a youth soccer team on weekends, even though Liam is too young to play yet, because I want to be the kind of father who is already there before he needs me. I do not know exactly where Rachel is. I hear things sometimes through her parents, who still call to check on their grandson. They visit. They are good to him and good to me, and her mother apologized to me once in a way that I think she needed more than I did. I forgave her because none of it was her fault. Marcus, last I heard, left the state. He never recovered the career he threw away. I do not think about him much. People ask me sometimes if I am angry, if I still carry it. The truth is, I do not. Anger is what they were counting on. If I had screamed in that hospital room, if I had thrown the phone, if I had reacted the way a wronged man is supposed to react, I would have walked away with nothing, and they would have walked away with everything. Instead, I stayed quiet. I planned, I built, and when the time came, I let the truth do all the shouting for me. I still have that screenshot, the text that started everything. How's our baby? I kept it. Not because I need the reminder, but because every time I see my son laugh, I understand that those 3 words were the worst mistake they ever made and the best thing that ever happened to me. They asked how the baby was. The baby is mine, the baby is happy, and the man holding him got the last laugh after all.
If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.